Hi guys, here's Ana Paula again. I hope you are all doing fine, you and your families. And today I want to share with you something about an important person, an important woman for the church named Lidia. You probably never heard of her, but her story is told in Acts 16. And there is two important things I want to emphasize and that we are going to see. The first thing is that she was pretty much a minority, okay? A member of the minority back on that time and on that place where she lived. And second, that despite that, she was willing to serve God and to serve His kingdom, to serve God's people with what she had, particularly with hospitality. So she opened her house to the church, to Paul, and we're going to see more details. And why is this important and why I want to emphasize that? Because in the last months, and we have been discussing a lot, and you guys are probably discussing this and watching this on TV and on social media, a lot of discussion about minorities, about oppression, and maybe you feel yourself as, or you identify yourself as a minority too, because maybe you are an immigrant, or even if you were born in the US, your parents were immigrants, or maybe you have some accent in your English, or maybe you are different from the mainstream at your school, and maybe you feel like a minority. And what we are going to see today is a woman that was pretty much oppressed, very oppressed minority in that day, but she, despite her difficulties and her struggles in the society, she was willing to serve God. And we are going to see more details. And so let's go to Acts 16, okay? Acts 16 is telling us about a journey, a Paul's journey, a missionary trip that Paul was going and preaching, stopping in different cities. This red line you see on the screen is his itinerary, okay? And the city he is going to stop and where he's going to meet Lidia is Philippi. Philippi is in the left upper corner of the map. So let's see if you can find. And I have two questions for you that I will give you the answer at the end, but you can search a little bit. First question, who wrote the book of Acts? Who wrote it? Second question, where is Philippi? The city of Philippi, it still exists. Where is it today? In which country the city of Philippi is today? So search if you can. At the end, I will give the answer. So what the Bible tells us, and so it's Acts 16, verse 12, that they went from Troas, and they were at least Paul, Luke, and Silas, okay? But probably more, but at least those three. And so this is what the text says. From Troas was another city before Philippi. You can find it in this red area, just in the left upper corner too. From Troas, we put out to sea and sailed straight for Samothrace, and the next day we went to Neapolis. From there, we traveled to Philippi, a Roman colony and the leading city of the district of Macedonia. So at that time, the area was called Macedonia. It's not anymore, okay? And we stayed there several days. On the Sabbath, I'm reading verse 13, we went outside the city gate to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer. We sat down and began to speak to the woman who had gathered there. One of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lidia, a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. And let's stop here. So we have a lot of information about Lydia to this point, okay? The first is that she was a woman that was joining this prayer group, this house prayer, in the city of Philippi. She was not from Philippi. She was from another city named Thyatira, in a different place. And so this is a third question to you guys. Where is Thyatira today? In which country Thyatira is today? And a bonus question. Where Thyatira is mentioned again, one place where Thyatira is mentioned again in the Bible. Okay, so Lydia, this woman, was in this prayer group next to the river, and Paul went there. Why Paul went there? And this is an interesting thing. What Paul did in a routine basis was the following. So he would get to a new city. He didn't know anyone. He went to share the gospel. What would he do? He would find or look after a synagogue, okay? A group of Jews. And then he was a Jew. He would go to the synagogue and he would share the gospel there. This is what he tried to do in Philippi. So he searched for a synagogue, but he didn't find one. Why he didn't find one? Because probably there were not enough male Jews there to have a synagogue. Because according to Jewish traditions, you need to have at least 10 Jewish men to have a synagogue. So they didn't have probably. But you could have a house prayer. And they usually have near to the rivers because they have some bathing rituals. And house prayer could be organized and run by women or by a fewer number of men. And this is what happened. So Paul didn't find a synagogue in Philippi. He went to look for a house prayer, and he finds one. And this house prayer was run by women. And this is pretty special because women at that time were not even close to what a man would be. So a woman would be not a second-class citizen, not even a citizen, not a third, fourth-class citizen. So women were really a minority and a very oppressed one. But those women were together praying, and one of those women was Lydia. And the interesting thing here is that Lydia was not a Jew. She became converted. So she was born in Thyatira, not a Jewish area. She became a worshiper of the real God, the true God, because she converted. It was not because she was born a Jew. And this is very interesting because she was a woman. She was not a native Jew, but she decided to be a worshiper of the real God. So this is the first thing we know about her. And we also know, and the text says, that she was a dealer in purple cloth. We nowadays are very used to clothes in any kind of color, of course. But if you stop and think about natural fabrics are not originally in any particular color. They are usually in some off-white or gray or beige. It depends on the cotton, how it goes, or the animals you use. So you don't have purple natural fabric to use. So what would you do to get clothes in a purple color? You need to dye, okay? You need to put some materials together with the cloth in its original color and to dye it, as we do with our hairs or other stuff, and then you'd get the color in a purple, the cloth in a purple color. And it was very, very, very expensive, because the substances, the materials you use to color cloth were very expensive, and they were very rare. So this woman, this Lidia woman, was someone that was not originally Jew. She was a businesswoman. She would do business with this purple coloring business, and she was a worshiper of God. So this is pretty amazing. And it's even more amazing that what she did after she heard about the gospel of Jesus from Paul. She decided, she understood, and she decided to become, she was already a worshiper of God, the true God. And when she understood the gospel, she decided to become a Christian. And what she did next. So when we go to verse 15, Acts 16, verse 15, when she and the members of her household, so Lydia was the head of her household. And this is also very, very peculiar, very unusual, because a woman would not be usually the head of her household. Or a husband, or a father, or a brother, or even a son. So probably Lydia was or single or a widow, and she didn't have a son or a brother or a father with her. So she was the head of her household. And this put her in an even more minority situation. So she was alone in a way, in a society, a very patriarchal society. She was alone. She was as a woman, she was the head of her household. She was a businesswoman, a successful woman in the material perspective. But she was a worshiper of God. And learning about the gospel, she decided to become a Christian. And what did she do? She offered her house to Paul and his group so they could stay with her. This is what she says. She invited us to her home. If you consider me a believer in the Lord, she said, come and stay at my house. And she persuaded us. So what we learn here is that this woman, just after she became a Christian, the first thing she did was to serve, was to offer what she could, what she had, to help God's people, to serve God in a way. So she had a home, probably a big home. She probably had money because of her business. And she was the head of the household, so she didn't need anyone's authorization. So she invited Paul and the others to be with her, and they joined. So this is someone that is a minority, probably target with a lot of prejudice in that city, but she decided to serve, to use what she had to serve God and his people. So this is the city of Philippi. So just so you have a better understanding, and you can then search where it is today. Okay, and the text goes, okay? Paul was in Lydia's house. Paul and his group was in Lydia's house, and they were preaching in Philippi. So they were going to this house of prayer, and they were sharing the gospel, and something happened, okay, in Philippi. A disturbance. So it was Paul expelled a demon from a young slave girl that was being used by some men to say things, and they were charging money. And Paul expelled the demon from the girl, and the guys, the owners of the girl, went after Paul and got them jailed because of that. And it was really crazy. And then a lot of things happened, and I don't have time to go through them. The fact is that they were in prison, and God made a miracle. Go and read Acts 16, made a miracle, and after the end of the day, they were released. And when they were released, after they were released, people were praying for them. The people in the city, the small church that were already being organized, was praying for them, and then they were finally released. What we see in the chapter 16 of Acts, going to the end of it, is the following. So verse 38, the officers reported to the magistrates, and when they heard that Paul and Silas were Roman citizens and they had been in jail, they were alarmed. They came to appease them and escort them from the prison, requesting them to leave the city. After Paul and Silas came out of the prison, they went to Lydia's house, where they meet with the brothers and sisters. They encouraged them, and they left, and they went to another city. So after all these crazy things going on in the city, they were arrested, they were released later, and everybody united, everybody came to a meeting in Lydia's house again, and they talked and they prayed together, they comforted each other, and Paul and his group left. What can we learn with Lydia's example? We can learn 3 things, okay? First thing is, Lydia was a businesswoman, okay? So it would be, from a business point of view, much better for her to adjust, to adopt the mainstream religion, okay? It was a Roman city. Romans had their own religion, their own system of multiple gods, the emperor, and so it would be better for business if she shared the system, the ongoing religion, the religion of the authorities, of the wealthy people. But she didn't do that, okay? Although she was a minority, although she was a woman alone, she didn't try to fit in society's standards, okay? She decided to worship the true God with a minority, with a group of Jews, with a small group of women that was committed to worship God no matter what, no matter where they were, even though they were far from Israel. Okay, so this is the first thing we learned with her. She was a businesswoman, she was someone alone, fighting for her survival, for her business, but she didn't try to fit in the standard of society, the mainstream religion, the mainstream practice. And this teaches us a lot. What are we, how do we relate to this? How do we relate to this idea of trying to fit in? So Lydia teaches us that even though you were a minority, you should commit yourself to worship the real God and to not make concessions to try to fit in or to try to be accepted by the world. A second thing we learned with Lydia, a very important thing, is that Lydia offered what she had to serve God's people. What did she had? A house. She had a house. So she could have Paul and the others as her guests. You probably already had guests at your home, maybe family, and you know that in the beginning is nice, but then you have discomfort, okay? You have your routine is changed, your stuff is being messed up, and you have discomfort. That let's face it. But and it's not a small group, at least 3 men, probably more. So Paul, Silas, and Luke, but probably some more. And so a lot of men suddenly in this house. It was probably a big house, but anyway, it had discomfort. And so what Lydia had, a house, she offered to serve God, to serve God's people. So it's the gift of the hospitality. So maybe you don't have much, but you probably have something, and you probably can do something to serve God, to be useful to God's people in some way. So this is what Lidia did. And the third thing we learned with her is that she faced not only discomfort, I already mentioned that, but she also faced risks. Because think with me, after Paul and his group, they were arrested. They were in conflict with the authorities. She was a businesswoman. This is bad for business. This is to be connected with complicated people, people that have trouble with the authorities, people that are going to jail, is very bad for business. But she didn't care. She didn't care about it. She not only housed them, after they left jail, they went all to her place. And so she was willing. The most important thing for her was not really her business, were not really the risks that it could bring to her, but it was to serve God, to help God's people, to do something, to help in some way what God was doing through those men. So then we can kind of close and try to think, and what can we learn in our daily lives about with this example, with this story of Lidia. I think two things we can think about. What do we have, and what can we do today that can be helpful to God and God's people? Maybe you think you don't have anything that can be helpful, but you certainly do. You have time, you have internet access, you have a phone, you have voice, you have writing skills, you have a lot, you have much, and you can do a lot of stuff too. What can you offer today? What can I offer today? What can we offer today to help God's people, to serve God? What can we do with the time we receive, with the energy we receive, with the resources we have to serve God, to do something that can be useful to God's people around the world, here where we are, and also around the world. We are connected pretty much, so we can do something like Lidia did with what she had. And second, which discomforts and risks are we willing to take to serve God and God's people? So this is something we should think about. Am I willing to take risks? Am I willing to be unpopular, or to lose some opportunities I think are maybe interesting because of my service to God or to God's people, because of my identification with Jesus and with the Church of Jesus? This is something that we learn from Lidia, and we should think about. When we say we love God above everything, does it really have a real consequence in our daily options and decisions? Okay, final, just answers. Who wrote Acts? Luke is the one, okay? Where is Philippi today? It's in Greece. Where is Thyatira today? The name of the city changed, but the place is the same. It is in Turkey. And you can check, there is a letter in Revelation to the city of Thyatira. You can check it out. God bless you guys, that we may learn, that we may be changed, that we may follow the example of Lidia, these wonderful women from the early church. God bless you. Bye-bye.